This video is going to discuss some of the first steps that we need to take in order to create a command, namely creating a command definition and then also the command controls in order to be able to put it in the toolbar, and that's called the toolbar controls. So let's start out looking at the Fusion 360 API object model. So if we zoom in here, we're going to be working within the user interface. So notice here that within the user interface we have our command definition. So if we want to create a command, we're first going to need a command definition. Later we're going to need a command created event, so we'll keep that in mind. As well as separately, in order to be able to put our command into the toolbar, we're going to have to access the toolbar panel list and then also down into toolbar controls. And once again, that's all within the user interface. So let's go over into the help documentation now. So let's go ahead and first look at the command definitions. So I'll scroll up here. So command definitions here. So once we access the command definitions object, this is basically, if we want a command, we need to define what it's going to look like and what it's going to do, and that's what we're going to do through the command definitions object. So if we want to, we have a couple of different options on what type of definitions we have. So if we want to create a button, then we use the add button definition, or if we want to create a checkbox or add a list. We're going to be doing a button in this example, so we can look here in the button. So once we access command definitions, we do add button definition, and then we have several different things that we can put in here. The ID, the name, tooltip, and the resource folder. So as we read here, the ID is just a unique identifier that we'll use later. A name is the name that's actually going to be displayed to the user. Tooltip can be just a short description on what the button or the command does. And then a resource folder. A resource folder is going to be a folder that contains a lot of pictures that it can be used. So I would recommend reading through this and looking at the requirements of some of the pictures. You're going to need a different size of picture so that in Fusion 360 it can use pictures in different places. Let's go ahead and actually look at that in Fusion 360. So I've created my command here, and so I've defined it with an ID. It also comes with a name. I've called it belt length calculator, and then underneath that is the description. And then as you can see, there's also a button there, and depending on the different spots that you see this, the button size needs to be different. So it needs you to upload a folder or have a folder with different sized pictures. So let's go ahead and quickly look at this in the code. So like I said, we first grab the user interface, and then within the user interface we get the command definitions. So I've called that command definitions, and then we just simply did command definitions.add button definition. Remember, the first thing is my ID, and then the name that we saw in the user interface, a short definition, and then also a folder. My folder is just called resources. So the same spot that I have this script running, or the folder that I have this script saved in, there's also a folder called resources with all of my pictures. So all of that basically defines the command. Now, in order to get that command definition actually in the toolbar, we need to access the toolbar, and that's the next step that we're going to be doing. So let's go ahead and go back to the help page, and we'll go back to the toolbar controls. So we're going to be accessing the toolbar controls in order to be able to control that command. So first of all, we need to be able to add a command to the toolbar. So once we access the toolbar controls, we're going to use add command, and now we need a command definition, position ID, and is before. I think we're actually just going to be using the command definition. So let's go ahead and look at that in the code. So once again, we're in the UI, and then we're going to access all of the toolbar panels. And then the item by ID, I'm just going to be putting in a specific position. I'm going to be putting it in the add-ins panel, and that ID is actually called Solid Scripts Add-ins panel. So I've just grabbed my toolbar panel where I want it in the toolbar. And then once I access that, so add-ins toolbar panel dot controls, I do dot add command, and like I said, we give it a definition, and then we give it an ID, which we saw here. So the position ID and the command definition. So Once we do those, we have our belt button control, and then there's a couple different options that we did. So belt button control is promoted by default. I made that true, as well as is promoted, and what that basically does is typically your command will come up in this list here. If we promote it, it will actually come up onto the top list here. So I've promoted it, and I've promoted it by default. So now we've defined our command and we've added it into the toolbar. The next video we're going to watch is going to be about event handlers. So once somebody presses that button, it's going to tell us what to do.